If you've ever heard of this sort of niche little art and character storage website Toyhouse, then one of the things that you probably already know about it is that it's invite-only, meaning the only way that you can make an account on it is if you own a code for the site. I'd assume part of the reason that it is so niche is because of the status. If anyone could make an account whenever they felt like, there'd probably be a lot more accounts on the site in general. Even though these codes in actuality aren't the hardest things to get a hold of, just the fact that you need one to join probably does discourage people right away from signing up, which keeps the site pretty small. But why is the site invite-only, and how does that benefit the people who are already on it, if at all? Toyhouse was created on October 6, 2014, making it over 10 years old. If the site is an invite beta, still, then when is it going to fully launch if it ever does? What features are we going to expect to see added between now and that hypothetical point in time that the site needs to have before it can fully launch and allow anyone to join without a code? That's what we're going to be exploring in this video essay for today. And if you're someone who's interested in Toyhouse or is on the site already or is just generally involved with this community, then I'd like to take a quick moment to mention to you the sponsor of today's video, Skillshare. Skillshare is the largest online learning community for creatives, and it offers thousands of classes led by experts in the industry in a ton of different genres, be it animation, art, freelance, photography, and more. If you've been up to date with my content, then you know I've been trying to get familiar with the art software Clip Studio Paint after only using Procreate for a very long time. One thing I wanted to try and learn on it was how to use the comic tools to make some one-off comic strips of my OCs interacting with each other, since I am primarily an OC artist. I found this class on Skillshare that I followed called Introduction to Clip Studio Paint, Comic and Manga Tool Basics for Beginners. The instructor was very clear and easy to follow along with, and the class was very well sectioned, which made it easy to find specifically what I was looking for and hear it explained to me while watching them use the tools in real time. Creativity is a muscle, and if you want to keep improving in art or whatever it is that you're passionate about, it's important to challenge yourself and regularly learn new things often. And if that interests you, then Skillshare is the perfect tool to experiment with new concepts that you haven't explored. But you don't have to just take my word for it. The first 500 people to use my link in the description will receive a 1-month free trial of Skillshare, so get started today. If you've seen my content in the past, you might know that this site has been a big passion of mine. It's one of the places that I'm the most active, and I've talked about it multiple times in the past. But the genre of comment that I get the most across all my content is, I really want to join Toyhouse if only I had a code. So I do really want to look at that for both the people still in that phase where they're looking for a code and for the people who are already members of the site. And first I want to talk about some quick facts. As I mentioned before, Toyhouse is over 10 years old. It's been the way it is for a very long time. In a few years, this site will start to be older than some of the people who watch my content. This site is older than Fortnite. Additionally, these codes are getting easier and easier to get a hold of as time has passed. If you didn't know, the place that they originally come from is premium users like myself. People who pay for the site's subscription will get 2 invite codes each week, which is a generous amount if you consider how many weeks there are in a year, and if you consider how many premium users there are, there's definitely thousands of those that are ungenerated and waiting to welcome a new user onto the platform. It does say on the site that invite codes will regularly be generated for testers whenever they feel like the site is ready for new users, but honestly, I've been on the site for 5 years, most of those years without premium, and I don't think that's ever happened. So basically the only place to get them is from premium users. And you might be thinking, well, there you go, case closed. It's a money thing, it's a scam, they're just trying to make money off of the people who want to join. But honestly, I don't think that's right. You can't even pay for premium if you don't already have an account, I'm pretty sure. And I don't know many people who'd pay to use a website just so that they could get their friend on it. I think most people who do have premium did so for the CSS features and the other features that come with it, and then the invite codes just started spawning. That's my case at least. And at the rate that they're provided, guys, hear me out. I don't think anyone has over 100 friends that just happen to want to use Toyhouse and don't already have an account. I'm not coping, I just genuinely don't think that's the norm. So it feels like you're kind of incentivized to hand them out for free anyway. I really don't think the purpose of the site being invite-only is just to make money. I think there's 3 main parts of it that I want to talk about in this video: site scaling, moderation, and exclusivity. I believe these are the main factors as to why the site functions the way that it does. So let's talk about site scaling. At its current state, as in what the site is like as of right now, it cannot handle any unpredictable number of people on it. And the reason for that ties into a lot of areas, but one is the fact that the site scaling isn't designed to handle TikTok level of users. Do I think the site would get that substantially larger if they took away the invite-only feature? I have no idea, there's no way to tell. But I do think its growth would be steeper and less controlled, and I can understand why, again, at its current state, the owner doesn't want that. Just the fact that you're prompted for an invite code to make an account does probably dissuade enough people to control the growth. Yes, in actuality, these codes are super easy to obtain and very widely available. But keep in mind, I know that because I'm one of the people who's generating them. You know that because you're hearing me or others say so. Not everyone has had this conversation before, and with no prior knowledge, you might assume, shoot, I don't have a code, but it's whatever, I didn't really need to make an account that bad anyway. So generally, since it's not as easy to make an account, not everyone is going to do so, which does control its growth. The site was made as a small passion project from what I can understand and sort of escalated a lot more than expected and has a much more active user base than anticipated. So while maybe it can handle some thousands of people online at one moment, I would not be surprised if it could not handle some tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, or more people online at one time. Just the infrastructure itself, but also the demand for more active maintenance that comes from a bigger sized platform. For example, there are bugs springing up relatively often on this site, like the fact that you can't sort by images in search right now, a bug that me and my friend Dabs were talking about in a call that we both noticed some weeks ago, and as of drafting this video, it's still not resolved. At the current size of the site, I don't think anyone really cares an awful lot for this to need to be fixed right away. Personally, I don't. It's whatever, it's just a random feature, and I don't care if they take a month or two longer to get around to it. But with tens of thousands of people, it's a pretty obvious existing bug that there'd be pushed to fix way quicker from at least a couple people. For context, I'm pretty sure apps like TikTok update multiple times a week. Of course, Toyhouse is a website, it's not an app, and it's not a traditional modern social media, but there's also way less pressure to be maintaining this site very, very often. In a post that was made about 4 years ago, the owner of Toyhouse, which, mind you, unless this has changed since I've last been made aware of it, which I couldn't find any evidence that it has, there is only one owner, one admin of the entire site. This site is essentially managed in its entirety by the individual. That will be relevant multiple times in this video. But yeah, the owner made this post 4 years ago where they covered some of the questions about Toyhouse's future, and even though it's old, I feel like it's still very relevant right now. And they did mention that they would like to put more time into development work, but they can't do so as much as they want to because a lot of their time at the moment goes into resolving help desk tickets. So the site is at a very slow-moving pace in terms of improvements. And even then, bigger community size will just mean more community disagreements and problems, which in turn means more help desk tickets. So this problem isn't really resolving itself anytime soon. And of course, they also mentioned that a lot of these problems could be resolved if they hired more staff for the site. But they countered that solution with the complications that arise with it. They don't have the funding to afford salaries for workers, which does cost a lot, mind you. If you think about it, for one person to employ another person, they need to be making enough money to fund both themselves and the other person. They're also worried about hiring untrustworthy moderators that threaten the safety and security of the site. I think I remember reading something about how they weren't exactly sure how best to go through the application process so that they could hire a mod that they could trust. And they also don't have the infrastructure to have a mod team right now. They don't have any mod tools and such that a moderator could use. And you might be thinking, well, what about the premium users who are investing money into the site? Can they not fund at least one salary for another mod? And my answer to that is, I have no idea. I don't know the net value of all the premium users on the site. I don't know what other costs the owner is paying to maintain the site. I've never owned a website with thousands of people using it every day, and I can't answer that for certain. We don't know if that premium money was for the site only or if it's being used to support the owner's lifestyle as well. They did say that they picked up a job, but in this economy, I would not be surprised if the money that they make off of Toyhouse also helps support them as a person. Maybe you were thinking about the point that if the cost of premium doesn't total enough to hire a mod or two, then why can't they just raise it? Which I was also thinking about as well, which is why I'm bringing it up. Premium is sort of dirt cheap. I can pay like some $20 and then not think about it for the entire calendar year. Personally, I wouldn't mind if that was bumped up to like 30. I spend so much time on Toyhouse, and I do really like the CSS benefit and the image management options, and especially if they were to add a few more benefits, like a built-in way to pick a random favoriter because I genuinely think that's relevant with how huge favorite to enter raffles are on the site, or stuff like that. I can't speak for everyone, but I feel like premium is pretty affordable as it is right now. And to be fair, it is a small website, and affordable as it is, that might be the reasonable price for a site like this. But if the site needs more money to start working towards getting out of its invite-only pre-launch status, I think there's people out there who would be willing to help. But I kind of understand why they haven't done this yet as well. People are really accustomed to the pricing as it is. The site is arguably so small and niche that maybe its prices shouldn't rival that of bigger social medias just for more cosmetic options. And even then, we don't know whether with the new prices, it would make it so that they have enough to fund staff. $30 a year might be reasonable, but once you get to $40, that is really pushing it. So that might not be the most ideal solution. I want to say that I do really feel for and empathize with the creator here, and I feel like even though they receive a lot of hate and a lot of criticism for the fact that they don't hire mods and they don't develop the site as fast as maybe they should, I still kind of want to understand where they're coming from. And I feel like everyone could benefit from doing the same. I feel like it'd be something like, let's say, for an analogy here, you made a comic strip with your OCs for fun and you posted it online, just the one strip. and you expected it to reach your average interactions, like some 50 likes. But as time went on, the comic strip was just steadily gaining attention, and lots of it. It had its own growing fan base of people who loved these characters. They're making fan art, headcanons, theories, and most importantly, they want more official content from you. They're pushing you for more strips, a full chapter. But by now, you're a college student, you have an in-person real-life job, you're trying to get your life in order, and you don't have the free time to be investing into drawing and developing a story right now. You could drop your other responsibilities, but you don't know for certain how far you can take this online attention and whether it's enough to support you. You know that the fan base is only going to get bigger over time, and if you work at your own pace, it'll take forever to complete and always be met with anger no matter what you do. I assume that's what the owner of Toyhouse sort of feels like right now, and that does sound like a stressful situation that's hard to navigate on your own. I don't think they created Toyhouse with the expectation that it would be such a large responsibility 10 years later. I do think we have to consider that to some regard before dishing out complaints their way. We are not them, and that's important to understand. But anyways, for this section, yeah, in conclusion, one of the reasons the site might be an invite-only status still is because it can't scale to handle an unknown number of people, and being invite-only does limit its growth to a more manageable size. So my next point is moderation, which I've already sort of talked about. Again, there is one staff member on this site, which seems nearly unmanageable as it is. And with the site growing, especially if they were to take away the invite-only status, it would be really difficult to moderate it. They were already saying that most of their time goes into help desk tickets as it is, and larger community does equal more problems. Toyhouse is a much more for-the-artist website than most that you'll find out there, and with something centered around a niche that is so specific as character trading, these problems that the owner has to resolve are likely much more complicated. Disagreements over ownership and character rights genuinely can take forever to resolve, especially when the owner is trying to acknowledge things like terms of service, which very often do have gray areas and holes in their wording because they were written by some guy on the internet and not an actual legal team. Guys, there's a quiz video that's relevant to this, isn't there? But yeah, I like that the owner puts the effort to bring the art community up by taking these problems seriously. I really do like that. But in order to do so, it requires a lot more effort to carefully review the situations as they come. Reviewing a Toyhouse flag is likely a lot harder to handle and resolve than an Instagram one, for example, in a lot of cases. But that's not to discredit your standard run-of-the-mill trolls and gooners, though. Toyhouse being invite-only does make it a lot less easy to make an account purely for the purpose of messing with people, which is why it doesn't happen very often. When it does happen, it goes straight up viral across the entire site, and they try to be more clever and creative about their rage bait to avoid getting banned in 5 days and wasting their time trying to find a code in the first place. But with Toyhouse being so free and old school, unfortunately, someone making an account just for the purpose of being annoying does need to be banned really quickly, or else they could potentially cause a lot of damage. It's not something that the owner has to worry about at the moment very much, because the invite-only status means that most of these people are going to do their thing on some other app instead. And I'm sure it still happens, but way less frequently. One thing that comes to mind as an example for what I'm saying is, when the whole Lupus Vulpus thing went down, I remember her Toyhouse page was still up for a while until it got closed finally. But people were kind of spamming in the comment section and stuff, and as funny as it was, which it was really funny to clarify, but as funny as it was, it did make me realize that people really can make an account on Toyhouse straight up not functional anymore if they really wanted to. The people who were gooning with HTML or whatever in the comment section managed to make it so that you couldn't read anything on the profile at all, through all the random pop-ups and GIFs everywhere and stuff. You just had to be there. It was so f***ing stupid and funny, oh my god. But it was funny because it was Lupus Vulpus. If that happened to me, I'd still find it fucking hilarious. But okay, if this happened to Dabs and I just couldn't use his profile until he got his ass online and fixed it, that'd be so annoying. You wouldn't be able to access anything, and that would be a nightmare to moderate if anyone could just create as many accounts as they wanted to with ease. I actually think it's crazy that that whole thing happened in 2020. That was 5 years ago, oh my god. But yeah, honestly, one person cannot moderate a whole fully public site, so that's probably another reason why Toyhouse is still invite-only indefinitely. Until we see the owner actually hire a staff team, we're likely not gonna see Toyhouse's full launch. So the last major point that I wanted to talk about was exclusivity, which might not sound as clear-cut as the rest of the video. To illustrate what I mean by this point, I'm gonna tell you a story. When I first joined Toyhouse, I came from a small coding website called Scratch. There was a growing art platform of tweens on here. I honestly don't know if this still happens. I really hope it does, because this is honestly the most ridiculous way to develop through middle school, and I think it should be a rite of passage for weird art kids to do so. But from my perspective back then, and the perspective of that whole group of kids, Toyhouse looked like this really hard to get into site where you had to magically obtain one of these elusive invite codes to join. There were whole drawing contests and stuff, with the prize being a singular Toyhouse code, and had dozens of entries of kids making full animations just for a chance to get on this website. Like, we wanted to go there so badly. We were all turning 13 or 14 around this time, and we were ready to move on to a less restrictive social media, and Toyhouse seemed like the perfect place for us to go, since it pretty much consisted of an aged-up version of our existing community already. The Scratch Artist to Toyhouse pipeline was already kind of common there, so I sort of knew that was where I was going next. But it took me a whole year of joining contests and asking around to finally be given one by my friend to join. A whole year where I could have and would have been actively using the site. If it took me any longer, I have no idea whether or not I would have even ended up here. And that is significant, considering I would like to say that this site was one of the biggest interests of mine, especially in my freshman year of high school. And I would like to say I'm probably one of the creators that's doing the most advertising of it in modern day. This isn't to discount what I've talked about already, but I can kind of understand where people are coming from when they say that being invite-only does make the site sort of feel like a gatekeepy cool kids club that barricades people from being a part of it. Younger teens on alternative social medias or sites like Scratch have no way to tell how widely available codes are, and they genuinely did anything to get a hold of one. And you might think, well, whatever, that's such an isolated situation. The population of Scratch kids who are interested in Toyhouse is a pretty small group. But no, the correlation is pretty significant. Artists who at a young age decided that they preferred the style of websites that functioned in a more old school fashion and didn't like the idea of social media that was heavily dependent on an algorithm to find community probably did find Toyhouse from alternative websites like Scratch. If you totaled up the people who migrated to Toyhouse from sites like Scratch, DeviantArt, Tumblr, I'm sure you'd be surprised at what quantity of Toyhouse users that would make up. I couldn't prove it to you, but at least logically it makes sense in my head. But despite that, I do want to say that exclusivity, hear me out, does make the site better and does make the site the way it is in a lot of ways. I would say that the reason the community is such a specific genre of openly accepting artists is because in some way or fashion, everyone on the site was already connected to the growing group that was already there. And yes, that also means the Toyhouse community can be equally as exhausting as it is welcoming. But any day, I'd choose to surround myself with thousands of people who I can at the very least assume have some sort of based shared core values, like ethics and empowering artists, versus a random sample of literally anyone, including people who don't. The cancel culture sucks, but at least it comes from a place of caring about others and looking out for them, even if it can be misguided. The stupid disagreements over character rights gray areas suck, but at least it means that everyone can sort of agree that they want some sort of framework to protect their creations. They just disagree about how that should come to be. And I'd rather be having that conversation than defending our hobby altogether with some nerd on a YouTube comment section, taking a place of superiority by saying some shit like, character training is so stupid and I don't get this because I could just make a character myself. You guys are wasting your money. Be so deadass, like, at least that's not the type of person that you have to deal with on a day-to-day basis interacting with someone on Toyhouse. Soapbox over. So yeah, being exclusive does, in some regard, make the site a better community depending on how you look at it. But at the same time, it also makes people like myself have to wait a ridiculous amount of time to even make an account because they don't know anyone who they can ask for a code from yet. I think it sort of influences how cliquey the site can be in the sense that if you don't know where to find a giveaway, you sort of have to be involved with a friend group to get there at all. So the last thing I wanted to talk about is my ideas to potentially work towards a solution of these three things that, if implemented, would maybe bring the site closer to a full launch. Of course, they require a lot of wishful thinking, and I'm also going off of strictly publicized information and don't have all the details to form a perfect solution, and I'm just someone you found on YouTube, so take what I suggest with a grain of salt. For the size scalability, I think both this and the second one would be solved with hiring a staff team, and to do so, I think that more time does need to be invested into site development instead of help desk tickets. And of course, that does mean that these tickets will be unresolved, which in some cases might not be that big of a deal, but in others might be disastrous. But I do think that users would be more understanding about that if they knew that what was happening was for the purpose of the site's full launch. And if they don't understand, then whatever, cheers to a more prosperous future. They'll forget about it in a year or two when the site fully launches. When I say staff team, I mean different types of staff for the first point and the second. Devs versus moderators. Even just hiring one developer to help improve the site so that maybe you can still be focusing on help desk tickets to some extent without coming to a complete standstill would be beneficial. And yes, that does raise the concern of hiring an untrustworthy dev, but if you run the application process like other employers do and you try to seek out an individual with proven experience, you might have to worry a little bit less about that. And as for funding, that I cannot solve without knowing the exact numbers of premium revenue and such. That's a budgeting situation that only the owner themselves can work on. I do suggest maybe offering a tiered subscription so that people who are willing to pay more can do so. For the moderation, I think a staff team would also benefit here, but instead of devs, hiring, site moderators. And yes, that's a lot harder to find people with experience for, and that could definitely still be abused, I understand. But even limiting their powers for a while in a sort of trial fashion where maybe all that they can actually do for a while is go through help desk tickets, flag ones they think require immediate attention, group duplicates, and reorder them in terms of priority, might still be a huge help for you without being possible to abuse. Hiring someone unfit is something that every employer has to worry about. That teen the thrift store hired could totally decide that they're going to take the easy way out and not wash the new clothes that come in. That volunteer at the animal shelter could totally decide to turn a blind eye to the litter that needs changing, and the consequences might be really bad, but they sort of just have to deal with it because eventually they'll settle on a team that works for them. Making the application process formal, asking for the relevant experience, and picking out the most promising applicants to schedule an interview are ways to narrow down the contenders and find someone who's at least communicative that you like and get along with. Could something still potentially go wrong? Of course, but you also might make huge progress in terms of finally launching the site, and I think that's a big deal. In terms of the exclusivity issue, I have such trouble saying that word, but honestly I have no concrete solution without, launching the site. Maybe a waitlist feature might be cool where premium users with more codes than they know what to do with can offer any amount to a built-in waitlist to give out to people who have been waiting to join. Or some sort of built-in forum that guests can access where they can get premium users' codes if they want to. I can see how maybe at the current point in time there's so many unused codes that doing so would essentially be a full launch and no waiting would actually happen. But if that's genuinely the case, then I think we must have reached the point where the whole invite-only thing is getting stupid and you might as well just start directly rate limiting people from joining. So yeah, that's all I had for you guys today. Thanks for watching to this point if you did. I don't know if anyone actually cares enough about this subject who have wanted a full video on it, but I care enough about it to make one, so... Toyhouse might possibly be my favorite site ever, so all the criticism in this video is intended to be constructive. I hope this didn't sound like I'm an apologist or it didn't sound like a straight up advertisement. I really like Toyhouse, and I also feel like the widespread opinion is very negative of the invite-only status, so I did want to clear up the perceived reasoning since I don't think enough people have considered the other perspective. So if I sound very defensive in parts of this video, that's why. If you enjoyed hearing me talk and you like what I guess do here, then maybe like the video and subscribe, I'd greatly appreciate that. And yeah, I'm gonna move on to the end card. So hi end card viewers, as per the usual, thanks for the support on the last video and thanks for watching through this one. I really hope your year has been off to a good start. I'm really trying to get through this semester. Second semester of senior year, I'm pushing through okay. I did commit to college though, so I'm graduating. Possibly, probably. Thank you for watching, and as always, I'll see you next time.